All right, Parks Commission meeting called to order. Let's do roll call.
Diana Wallace.
Laurie Mills.
Chad Smith.
Melissa Morrow.
Don Hudson.
Mary Elizabeth Cofer.
Great. All right, any public comments? Doesn't look like it. All right, terrific. Moving right along. Consent agenda. We need a motion to approve the minutes of the August 1st, 2024 meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Great.
I'll second.
Right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion passes. All right, Steve, you want to go? Great.
Steve Frank, Western Hills softball, thank you. Season has kind of picked up, practices have started. I don't think Little League, I've seen a few teams up there. Games are gonna start September 21st, and they will go through November 2nd at least, maybe November 9th. Just depends if we can find some other teams. We have softball has 3 teams, a 14U, a 10U, and an 8U. And we will turn the schedule in. It's almost finalized, but we'll have that in shortly. 8U is the only one that's practicing on 3, 4, 5, which I know is interest for the community, and they're on Tuesday nights. And that's about it.
Great.
Any other questions, comments?
Is that registration up, down, about the same?
For softball, it's pretty much exactly the same.
Okay.
So for fall, it's about 45 to 50 kids in the fall.
I know Western Hills said they were up a little bit this fall. I think like 10-15%. So, and I think their games will start possibly the week before that, but I don't know if they're playing.
I don't know.
Michaela, or do you
Michaela,
know if they've gotten a schedule?
Did you get access to that schedule?
I did. Yes.
You did through that Google
To the Google Doc. Or,
Google
sorry,
Doc
the
from
Excel doc.
from Aaron?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So do you know
And-
when it says the games start? Or even practices?
So I see 9/16 for the start of the season
Great.
and going through at least the end of November.
And I just let Aaron know as I was pulling in about Rolling Wood Night Out on the 17th from 6 to 8.
Yes.
Yeah. So I saw it on that banner, and he had asked me about it.
Cool.
What day is that?
September
Tuesday.
17th,
Okay.
6 to 8.
It's next Tuesday, actually. It's a week from today.
Okay. And they're going to use field 1.
I don't know.
Are they doing is that
Usually-
helicopter
They're
and
doing
everything
helicopter
again?
and all that.
Usually
Oh,
they
sweet.
Yeah, so
No
Okay.
the only
guys.
team we'll have up there is the little ones, and they'll be back on field 3, so that shouldn't interfere, but
You might let them know something
I will.
fun is happening.
Because
Yeah.
they usually
They'll
close
probably come up
this
for it.
parking lot, the front parking lot for the barbecue or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah,
Great.
maybe a helicopter
Here's
comes
how it
on
looks for all the kids.
field
Oh,
one.
nice.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, the only other ones, in the fall, we always try to play away on ACL weekends, so,
Oh yeah.
but, all right.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Terrific. All right. So we really only have one agenda item today, and it's talking about the trail improvements, and it may take us the whole 55 minutes, or maybe magically we all agree on everything and it goes really fast. But I did ask Izzy to come today, and I want to do a quick sort of history overview and then get some thoughts from the committee that came and walked the trail together. So you all may remember that Izzy and Kevin had worked on a concept which was to do a demo of the trail edging. Basically, that's just the limestone. And the bid for that, which is not, it's probably expired. So any bids that we're talking about today are old ones. But they give us a ballpark of where we were. and that was for like $10,000.
And just one point of
Yep, yep, yep.
clarification, is it just edging? It does not address any of the crushed granite or any of that. It's just the edging and moving all of the limestone stones up and conform.
The quote for, it was just under 10,000. That was for 200 linear feet of actually lining up the edging, grading, and putting down some new crushed granite.
Okay.
It was kind of like a show and tell what
Yeah.
it was supposed to look like.
Did it
Show us
include-
200 feet of what it's going to look like if we commit to the full thing.
Did
Correct.
it include
Okay.
the concrete footing wall?
Correct.
Concrete footing?
Yeah, underneath the actual edge. I like the way you put it, Melissa. It was the edging of the limestone. I refer to them as pavers, but
Yep.
and yes, it was actually pull up 200 linear feet of that, set the footing along with the rebar, and pour the foundation or pour the footing, set the pavers in place, scrape off all the old and grade it the way it's supposed to, so you have a nice flow of the water and any
So deal with the grading.
correct grading and go ahead and put new crushed granite down.
So they would do, for around 10,000, they would do 200 feet of a footing. And I guess you'd have some sand on top of the footing to make up for the different in widths or heights of the blocks.
Correct. It would be actually going in there and setting the sand correctly or gravel, whatever, depends on once you dig up the old stuff and see what
Okay. And
would
then-
be adequate for it.
And then they'd come in and they would replace the decomposed granite as
Yeah,
needed.
scrape off the old stuff, grade it, put some
Now,
new
the-
stuff.
There's also a bid of a
So
hundred.
we'll get to that next.
Okay,
We're-
okay.
Right now, we're just
It
talking
is
about,
pertinent to that,
it
but
is.
go ahead.
We're just doing history. I
Yeah.
just wanted clarification on what exactly that 10K paid for.
It's
Yeah.
just the
And
edge.
is can I ask one more
Yeah.
question about just that part?
Sure.
Is the intent in doing the 200 linear feet that we would only do that in the areas we identified that were problems, where we had problems with erosion, or would the intent be to do that for the entire trail?
Initially, it was for the whole trail.
Okay.
And well, let me rephrase that. Initially, that quote for the 10,000 for the 200 linear feet was again what the whole trail could look like,
Right.
and so that was my thought was to start at that initial part over there behind field. Is that 3?
Yeah, it's where
3,
the
4, and 5.
bleachers
Yeah.
are and all that erosion
Correct,
is right
correct.
there that we talked
Yeah.
about. Other
Up to that point where you have that first feed dish where
Yeah.
the water would actually deviates down to the
the
creek from there.
largest area of erosion we have.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
both sides of that rock reinforced waterway that runs across the trail is my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You can go ahead.
So, and my point, what I'm gonna try and do here is talk about what Izzy, and sort of so we all know as much as possible, that we're comparing apples to apples.
Yes.
So we know what we're getting for that. And, Izzy, I know yesterday I asked you to give me the number of linear feet that the entire
Yes,
trail
that was
would
my
be.
next question.
And that would include the upper trail and coming down and the lower trail.
Okay, those 5,200 linear feet that we have a quote for was for the upper trail, and down here would be the lower trail.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if y'all moving forward, if y'all determine that not the whole trail needs to be done, then I would actually ask for y'all to let me know where the new quote, like what areas are deemed that we need to get a quote for.
Did you say 252 linear feet?
5,200 linear feet.
5,200.
That's
5,200.
both.
Yeah.
That's both sides.
Upper and lower
Upper
trail.
and lower.
Yes.
And it was 10K for 200 linear feet.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you do the math, you're at 260,000,
Yeah.
okay? So that, I wanted to make sure, because I think originally when we were thinking the 10K, it was like, oh, 10K, but that's just to do
That's a sample.
it's a sample, and it's
Yeah.
to see if this works and if we
It's
like it. And
it's a
if
sample, and again, you're only talking about like a mobilization fee, because I don't think, and that quote is was actually on there as a but just to think about, okay, well, if they do, or anybody for that matter, if they were to get that contract, is that they're on site and they don't have to be going back and forth,
Right.
So the last quote for the 5,200 linear feet, I believe it was at that time was $106,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
so that is, but how does the
That's the
two?
footing only, was my understanding.
Correct.
Because
It was
he's talking about the
resetting the stone.
mobilization fee is what makes a difference.
that can be, yes, and the 106,000 did not include crushed granite. It was just strictly for
Right,
the pavers being reset.
right. So, again, it's not perfect to compare, so what we may end up wanting to do is getting another bid on that. But I think this gives us the idea that somewhere between 106,000, and then if you add in the crushed granite, if you were to go using the 200 as your guide of how far 5,200, it would be closer to $250,000. So,
Which
rum-
puts it at the same
So-
fee as Sayla.
So I was gonna remind you guys, the Ishan bid, and I can pass it around or we can get copies of it, but that included, the mobilization, and then that also included stay lock. And so I did give Tim a call yesterday just to remind me what exactly his bid was. And what he said was that included the stay lock, the stabilizer, and in some cases just crushed granite, depending on
What the
where it
trend
was. And so when they had gone through, and I can pass this around, it included literally removing the base underneath the trail, because anywhere that you were gonna put the stay lock, you can't just mix in the stay lock to existing crushed granite. You actually have to remove it, put in the base, and then add clean crushed granite. Where Tim is, and I did not invite him today, because I know he's a very busy person, he's already given us a lot of time, but, he has pretty much, and he's happy to take additional, if I wanna call him and ask him specific questions to this bid, but he sort of has given as much time as he feels is needed for the project. If we wanted to do some sort of, part of this and part of them, then he said he's happy to do that, but he would basically charge us as a consultant at a certain consulting rate and fee. So, again, not that we can't get him to make this smaller, and if we decide that, 250,000 is really just not where the park is feeling like we could fundraise for the trail at this time, or that the city is not in a good place to do that, then we can start, making these smaller. But, that's sort of where we are. We have a 250 bid and somewhere between 100 and a 260 bid. And so I wanted to take a little time today to talk about, not a long time ago, 6 months ago or so, we all sort of discussed what our most important priorities were in the park, and the walking trail was one of them. When I did ask Tim, and this is, just sort of a off the cuff, but I said, okay, so if you were the mayor, what advice would you give me about moving forward with either of these projects? And he had a really good insight, which was, the day that I came and watched you guys, you had 3 other people coming in talking about drainage. You had, tree stuff that you were talking about, et cetera. And so his advice to us right now is that whatever we decide to do, we might want to make sure that we've got all the drainage things in place and all of the tree project in place, so that we're not installing something that we're actually going to destroy,
Impact the other projects.
And so, all that to say, as much as I would love for us to, quickly decide on something and move forward, I do want to make sure that, the tree project, which we have all approved and is now sitting with city council, to find out sort of, they're gonna adopt their budget, and we should know, Michaela, I don't know if you have a predicting ball, but, you know,
No, not really at this time.
but no later than October, because they have to adopt a budget. We should know whether the tree project has been approved and is moving forward, and we should know more about the drainage project that's right behind the
Field house.
yeah, the field house. And I do think that at that point, we might be in a better place to say, okay, which do we want to go towards? Do we want to do the 10,000 and do it that way? Or do we want to, now with Tim, we would have to contract him and say for X number of dollars, can you break this down into smaller increments where we could have a test run of it?
My
I-
understanding,
Okay.
go ahead, Mary Elizabeth.
I would suggest if someone wants to save us some money, a lot of money, I would suggest if somebody wants to see a test run, go to the trail that already exists. I mean, I've been on the trail, Dawn's been on the trail, it's already there. And go look at it. In fact, I can find out exactly where it mostly gets underwater. I can find that out and give you those ideas so you can go and look at it if you want to see how it works. That would save us a lot of money. But I would also suggest that when we did our walkthrough recently, y'all were talking about patching here and here and here. I would think that also to save money, if we do decide to do this in pieces, do like Tim talked about, maybe do half here and half there. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was easily only one side of the trail that really had
Yes,
issues.
if it's the horseshoe that goes from like the field house to the opposite side, and that part of the trail is where all the erosion is happening. It is not around this
Exactly. And so don't try to do a bit here, and a bit there,
Right.
but just get that whole section done. And I think that would save us money. And if you remember when Tim did the first walkthrough with us and talked about it and where it needed help, he said that upper part was fine. He wouldn't be putting Staylock up there. He wouldn't suggest Staylock for that area. And those are just my thoughts.
Great.
When you, I walked the trail a week ago or so, and I took photographs and just noted how many places there were where the decomposed granite had run over the border stones, and there's 50 of them. So it's not that it's a terrible erosion problem, but it's unsightly. And as I was looking at it, there are some areas that really are erosion problems, but mainly it's places where I think a few crooked stones are fine, but not way crooked. It has a look like I did it in my garden, you know. But it's there's a whole lot of them where it's just run even along Rollingwood Drive, throughout the trail, along beside the parking lot. There's a lot of it there. So that's one point I'd like to make, and then another one is in just redoing the border stones and having the decomposed granite repaired after that. That's a fairly substantial job. I would guess that would be in the $20,000-$30,000 at least. I don't know, but it's in thinking of that 100 and some thousand, 106,000. Well, that doesn't finish that. It still needs the decomposed granite to be put in place and brought up to the level of the stones and all that.
Well, it's a little bit more than just adding the decomposed granite. It's actually going through and scraping off all the old stuff, grading it so that you do have the proper drainage to begin with, and then
Would they do that as part of for the 106,000?
No.
Okay.
No,
So
it's
that
very
would be-
labor intensive.
That would be so the way that would compare to Tim Eishen's work is they probably wouldn't be putting down compacted road base under the decomposed granite. They'd probably just be, I believe the decomposed granite just laid on the dirt as it is done now.
Yeah.
So there's a variable there that we don't really know what it costs. One other point is that trail has been there for 30 years. Do you know when that trail was put in?
No, but, still it's been there at least 20.
Okay, well, 20.
I was gonna say about 20, yeah.
Okay, well, it's, when you look at it, it's not horrible for a 20-year-old trail. It's still, even as it is, it's serviceable. Certainly isn't perfect. So, my thoughts.
Well, one thing I keep going back to is the drainage behind the field house. Because if we don't address the volume and the velocity of the water that's coming over that area and across the path down below, there's not much point in trying something on that path when we don't know if we're gonna be able to, how much we're gonna stem the tide. So we don't wanna experiment there. We wanna find out, what are we going to have to deal with? What do we have to repair? And the same thing is, I would actually like to see that addressed, so we can then start looking at the trail at the whole. And I would actually, because time-wise, it seems to me more reasonable and more appropriate to address triage, the bigger problem first. The bigger problem is what we've got behind the field house. What we're looking forward to doing and really enjoying doing is the trees and the grasses and the decorative home improvements that we all get enthusiastic about. It's hard to get enthusiastic about a retaining wall, but it needs to be done because it seriously impacts what's happening down below. And so I would prioritize things and say, okay, let's get that done. Let's get it out of the way. And then also it gives us something to say, hey, look what we did with the money, guys. Look what
We did
did.
something.
We did something,
I would
and we can do more.
So real quick, just to clarify, Michaela, we have already made the recommendation to do that fix to the council,
The retaining wall.
the retaining wall.
The retaining
Do
wall.
we know where that is? Like, has it been bid out? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware.
That's Kevin's project, isn't it?
I think what's happened so far is that it has been referred to Kay Freeze for her evaluation, and then she's going to be sending it back to council. Where it is in that, I do not
The
know.
last I heard, I thought the holdup was what to put behind, correct me if I'm wrong, but the holdup was what to put behind it? Was it gravel, was it plantings, what was it? That was the last I heard. And I don't know if they were depending on K-Freeze or someone else to make that call.
Is Ashley around? I think Ashley would know.
No, she's not in the office at this moment, but I believe, everything is still being reviewed by engineers.
Okay, so
I
it's
believe
gone
that's
from
my
Chris and Innovative Water Solutions to Kay Freeze. And that's one thing, we don't need additional designers on there. We've got, this guy is just flat out exactly his business. He's
Yeah.
not landscape artist, he's not doing other
Right.
things.
Yeah.
He's single-mindedly focused on getting that problem solved.
So
So-
Diane, to your point, I think Parks has done all it can to recommend to council to get that fixed first.
Right, and she's just saying, let's get all that done.
Yeah.
And then come back to the trail.
Yep.
And see what we can do then. And that most likely isn't till the first of the year, and I bet our bids change again.
Sure.
And I would like to add something here. We talk about the drainage and the erosion there, but I would beg you to look at the other end of the park, because I promise you, the drainage, the erosion there is every bit as bad.
Yeah.
We have lost ground there, and the proof is in that Brian Ryder, he built a little cactus garden thing there. It's fallen off the hill, and he only built that several years ago, and it is disappearing. That's how much ground we are losing. So I don't know that this is necessarily worse than that, the drainage, but I agree. We need to address the drainage.
The drainage first.
Yes.
Great, well, I think that's in line with what Tim was recommending also, that we wait. And so, again, just for the public record, that's sort of what we're waiting on. But meanwhile, is there anything towards the trail that you all feel like we should research further, know more?
I'm fine with,
Okay.
Oh, Kevin had his hand.
Oh, yeah.
raised at one
Go
point.
ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I was just gonna answer your question about the status of the retaining wall at council.
Oh, great.
So, yeah, y'all did approve it, and RCDC approved the funding for it. And then when it went to council, council wanted some engineering studies of drainage on the park. The engineers came back and said, you don't need engineering studies at the park. You don't need an engineering study for this retaining wall. Council wanted it anyway, so the engineers have been working on writing specs for the retaining wall. And that's taken several months because they're going back and forth between K-Freeze and this other contractor that gave a bid. And they hadn't done it as of last council meeting, but we expect it any time. Once that comes in from the engineers, the specs for the bid, it'll be bid by city administration and it'll get done because it's already approved. The issues about what you're gonna plant in there as far as ornamental grasses or whatever else will go in there is stuff that, you guys can take up later. It's not gonna hold up the project, but it may start with grass, and if y'all want to do something different or want to recommend something else in there, you can.
okay, that's great.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. So back to the trail. Is there anything anybody wants to recommend or ask the group to do or discuss?
I think we're kind of okay on that, but I would suggest that who's on the thing with the retaining wall, the drainage, y'all might want to go ahead and start looking for recommendations, advice on what to put behind it. And Ted Moss might be a good one to confer with on that. And I can give you their contact information.
I don't think we're involved in that right now.
No, she
Yeah,
was.
no, Chad, Victoria, and I are doing the retaining wall.
Yeah. So is there anything else that we were supposed to be doing before the next?
I think Kevin's got his hand raised again.
Kevin?
I like that.
Yeah, just one comment on the trail, on the proposals. When you're considering them, keep in mind that the one with the Staylock proposal is, I do not believe that includes a footing for all the side stones. And I think what got us started on this was Izzy coming to us saying, hey, the problem with this trail is the border stones are shifting. They're going up and down, and when they sink, it looks like, the granite's washing over them, but they're just crooked and sinking. And that's what the footing was for. But I'm not sure. Just make sure, see what that other bid from the Staylock guy includes about the footings, because I'm not sure that it does.
I know he mentioned that they would be resetting all of them, and in fact, he makes an allowance for additional limestone because he thought once he gets it aligned, they'll need some additional, and there is Portland cement in there as well. So I don't think it's the same footing design, and we can get detail on that, just to look at it to be able to compare. I'm glad you mentioned that though, Kevin, because one of the things that Tim did say yesterday, and I think he brought it up to us before, was he, as far as maintenance goes, actually would recommend no limestone, what do you call it? Border.
Boundary, border. yeah.
Because, and here's why he said that. He said, when you have a limestone border, that means actually people stay in the middle. They don't walk on the full trail. And when you have people walk the full trail, they actually kill the creeping grasses and other things that are coming up. And so he said you could save a bunch of money if you actually removed all the limestone and just had the trail. And that's what he said, most of their trails do not have a border. They just are free and open. But that's a aesthetic and, and something else to think about. But he did mention that as being a reduction for maintenance. Now, I still believe that there will be mowing and edging even without the limestone border. But he did say with the limestone border, it's more labor intensive in terms of, having to deal with the border.
I never thought about that. That's kind of interesting.
Izzy, any thoughts about that?
Public Works will work around whatever y'all want to do.
When you mentioned rebar, is that just under the border?
Yes,
It's not under the entire trail, is it?
No, yeah, it's to reinforce. Just underneath the border. It's just to reinforce
Just
the
to
that footing.
reinforce the concrete that's being poured for the footers.
Yeah, if you're
that's
doing
in
that
the
expense
borders.
and you're doing that labor, you might as well do it right. Set it where it's not going to shift. And
Okay, I was just curious
Yeah.
if that was
yeah,
was
no,
where
not
the rebar
underneath
was
the whole
going.
trail. No.
Okay.
You know, the border stones are just so good looking. I like that look.
Yeah.
Steve?
I'm afraid I'm with you on that. I like the way it
I was
looks.
just gonna say, it might not be, but would that, I think the borders probably help with lawn care, like edging around it. Like,
Yes.
if you don't have the borders, then it's tough to edge the trail with rocks and all that, or mow, but.
I think one way or another, we have to have some sort of border, and I would not advise taking all of that out.
I think it would be a difficult change for people to accept. We're so used to
Right.
it. But then, you know what, would defer as far as maintenance, I would defer to Izzy on that. I mean, this is the crew that does it, so
It's true.
I'm not
Do
gonna
we
give
have
my
any
opinion.
existing trail that doesn't have border and some that does? Like, do we
No,
know?
it all if it's a walking trail, it has that border.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
Oh, trust me, if we didn't have that border, it would be fine. But as far as Steve's point, yes, even though you'll have, I'll be honest with you, I don't know how Staylock works, but I'm thinking either way, at some point it starts loosening up, and all that's going to start going into the grass. Where at least right now, some of it is it's contained within those borders.
Yep. Okay. Any other thoughts or desire for discussion about
Can I
trails?
ask-
This was a good discussion.
Yeah. Can I ask you what else was on our list? It was the trails, the trees, we're still waiting.
The trees are with
we've-
council,
We've made that recommendation to
Yeah.
council.
and we'll know in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
The retaining wall and the trail.
We're been so fast that now council's waiting for us, or we're waiting.
I was
on
We're
gonna
waiting on
ask
council,
you
yeah.
About getting some asphalt put down close to the entrance off Rollingwood Drive, right there, close to that circular bed. Can y'all put a little bit of asphalt right there, an asphalt patch where all that's broken up?
Okay, we
Where the trail meets the drive.
yeah, we generally put a material called permapatch, but again, it's just kind of a Band-Aid, so
Yeah,
it starts, you know, especially when you have a big rain, it starts washing
Right.
away. But no, definitely, I'll put it on the list for the guys to put some on there.
Thank you.
Okay.
So
Great meeting.
we're, as far as where we're
Love
at
it.
on the trail is we're on hold
Yeah,
for
Yeah.
some time, and we haven't really decided which path we're gonna take.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay, and
We're
we've got,
waiting for
and
the
we've got
drainage.
time.
And we've got time.
Okay.
Yep. Great. Well, I feel really good about that.
Me too.
Park Commission financials through August 31st. Those are just, you have them available to you if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make it.
All right.
I'll second that.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. All right. And